We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Thursday, March 5th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Chia.
Good morning, Soo-jin.
Good morning. Also Fabius with us.
Great to be here.
Good to have you, and both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're headed toward the end of the work week, and as Friday inches closer, maybe you're already thinking about slowing down, recharging, or even picking up something new to learn. But that raises an interesting question. These days, students have AI tutors, online lectures, and study apps at their fingertips. But before we talk about that, let's take a little trip down memory lane and talk about how the generation that grew up before all that studied. So Jian, how did millennials study?
Well, I studied mainly with my textbook, which is sort of a classic line in Korea. During the interviews, like the top scores in the Suneung or Korean CST, they say that their success was mainly because of the textbook. Well, looking back on my school days, technology wasn't as advanced as it is for children these days, but we still explored those quite a variety of ways to study. I attended academy classes, lots of private tutoring, and I was introduced to online lectures relatively early on, and I experienced those live video classes with live chats, and workbooks were thick, and I used lots of colourful highlighters, and because most of my learning was paper-based and printed books. And
very analog.
Very analog indeed. And if I didn't know a word, a vocabulary, I looked it up in a paper book that is called a dictionary. I'm sure probably doesn't know this book. Are you familiar with it?
Never
it's a very
heard of
thick
it.
book known as a dictionary. I use my MP3 player for listening practice, though mostly for pop songs indeed. And we were the generation that experienced both traditional ways of studying and digital learning at the same time. That's the millennial. So who is with me?
So it sounds like you did experience the best of both generations. What about you, Fabi? How did Gen Z study?
Well, actually pretty similar, but I feel like during my generation, technology was definitely more present. In classrooms, we always had digital boards, and then most schools would give students these very small laptops with limited internet access. In some cases, they would even substitute all of the textbooks for digital tablets, which is quite modern, although things are becoming a little bit more analog these days. We obviously didn't have AI tools, and because of that, in order to pretty much filter and organize all of the information available on the internet, Wikipedia became the best friend for most students, and that was my case too. And for exams, people would just memorize all of the contents from the textbooks and pretty much vomit it during the exam day, which meant that most of us ended up forgetting about all of the contents after the exam took place. In my case, the method that really helped me was pretty much forcing my family and my friends to ask me all the questions and do this kind of like oral exam, and that helped me remember things a lot better. So I guess that human interaction played a big part in that.
Sometimes it's like the analog ways that really work as well. So it shows that how it's not always technology itself, but the active engagement, like being quizzed by others, that make learning stick. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. The way Gen Z studies and communicates looks dramatically different from previous generations, largely shaped by the technology now at their fingertips. From AI-powered study tools to constant online connectivity, learning has become faster and more interactive than ever before. But while these advancements offer clear benefits such as convenience and instant information, some researchers argue there may be trade-offs. In several key cognitive indicators, Gen Z has shown a lower performance compared to earlier generations. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at why some experts say Gen Z could be the first generation in modern history to score lower than their parents on certain intelligence measures, the impact social media may be having on brain development, and how countries overseas are moving to regulate teen social media use. As I just saw in a video, concerns about Gen Z's cognitive performance are no longer just cultural commentary. They're now part of formal academic and policy discussions. The debate has even reached Capitol Hill in the United States, and one neuroscientist recently brought this issue directly before U.S. lawmakers. So, what did he tell Congress about Gen Z's cognitive scores, Jian?
Well, it is an alarming development indeed. So for many, it feels both surprising and alarming and also deeply concerning. According to neuroscientist Dr. Jared Cooney-Hubas, Gen Z may be the first generation to record lower academic performance than the one before it. Students born between 1997 and 2010 showed lower results than earlier generations. He actually said worse academically than the one before. So the gaps were observed in attention span, working memory, literacy, numeracy, executive function, which is the ability to plan and control their behavior, and also general IQ was affected in their general performances. In several cognitive indicators, including overall IQ trends, scores seem to stop improving or even decline. So for many experts, the message is absolutely clear. Something in the way we learn is changing.
I think for me, what's most striking about this is that the claim that the Gen Z is the first generation to record lower standardized academic scores than the one immediately before it, and not just in one area, but across various areas, including overall IQ, and which is very concerning. And also, what makes it even more surprising is that this trend breaks a long-standing historical pattern. So, how does this fabric compare to past generational trends?
Well, it compares in the sense that it is the first time we are seeing this type of results. You see, researchers have measured generational cognitive development since the late 1800s. And until now, every single generation outperformed their parents. But that is not the case right now with the Z generation. And so because of that, a lot of people are concerned, because most experts do point out the fact that younger generations right now are having a tougher time to keep up with the standards and levels of intelligence from their previous generation. Interestingly enough, though, Gen Z doesn't really agree, and they show lots of confidence in their intellectual level despite this very depressing results. In fact, many consider their learning abilities and their level of intelligence to be definitely much more higher than those results. But experts do point out that this excessive confidence might be them just overestimating their learning skills, which is quite depressing for me, honestly. I hope that is not the case.
I mean, that reversal is truly fascinating. For such a long time, each generation had outperformed the last, and at the same time, like you said, Gen Z appears to be, it's quite ironic, they seem to rate their own learning ability more highly than their measured outcomes suggest, which is also very Gen Z coded. I feel like that confidence. So what's driving this cognitive shift in Gen Z, Julian?
That is quite a good question indeed. So we have to think about why are they performing worse academically? Why are they studying? One widely discussed explanation is early and constant use of digital devices are the reason. Yeah, Gen Z is the first generation to grow up fully immersed in screens from early childhood. Dr. Hobas has pointed to rising screen time as a possible contributing factor. He argues that traditional learning, reading out loud, writing by hand, and sustained focus engages deeper cognitive processing. In contrast, much of Gen Z's learning has relied on edtech platforms. I'm talking about online learning apps, short concept summaries, and video-based instruction. Many students may feel they understand the material, the content, after watching or skimming content on a screen. But the truth is, research suggests that this kind of surface learning process is harder to store in your long-term memory. So it's a bit like reading an article. You're reading the article, but you're not totally understanding the article itself. You don't know the headline, the subject itself. So it is indeed fast to consume, but easy to forget at the same time.
Right, I think that distinction that you mentioned about feeling like you understand something, actually retaining it in long term is crucial. And this isn't just about individual study habits, it also ties into broader educational structures. So how has educational technology or edutech improved learning outcomes overall?
Well, it has improved the fact that we now have access to loads of information and we can also fact check everything. The problem is that experts still point out that human intelligence usually inherently comes through social interaction. That means engaging with other people, talking and having pretty much a debate about things that happen all around us. So deep learning is pretty much focused on this social process. Without that, which is what we're facing right now, edutechnology brings us to a realm where everything is remote. Remote education, digital education, and individualized learning. According to data from the National Assessment of Education Progress, NAEP, when students were provided only one technological device to complete their tests in an individualized way, they showed lower scores than controlled groups that didn't have this type of devices or this type of instructions. So this type of research suggests that though devices do give us lots of tools that can be quite helpful in discovering different things, they can become a little bit overwhelming or hard to handle. And in the end, they might not be the most optimal for ending up with, knowledge that is retained, which is the biggest problem.
Right, and this kind of goes along with what you said about what you said in the interest. Well, you said what helped you really retain the information was when your family members would quiz you on the material, right? That's
a memory that I could attach to that specific moment.
Yeah, right.
But when you're seeing your screen every single day, every single hour, everything belongs to the same level of excitement.
Right.
So I think it's pretty hard to learn.
Agreed. So if data from the U.S. National Assessment of Educational Progress shows that students given individual devices often perform worse than those taught without them, it suggests that simply adding technology doesn't automatically enhance learning and may in some contexts even hinder it. So we also wanted to hear directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the IDI News YouTube channel asking why is Gen Z's cognitive performance evaluated lower than previous generations. So here's what the results showed. Majority of respondents, 58%, cited excessive use of digital devices as the primary reason. Another 24% pointed to reduced face-to-face interaction, suggesting that less in-person discussion and social learning may also be playing a role. 13% said summary-focused bite-sized learning is to blame, while just 5% believe the issue stems from insufficient overall study time. So what stands out here is that most viewers aren't blaming effort, they're blaming the learning environment. The concern isn't that Gen Z isn't studying, but that the way they're studying and the digital ecosystem surrounding them may be fundamentally reshaping how their brains process and retain information. So to gain an expert's perspective on this, we're going to talk to someone who's part of the education sector. That conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Dr. Park Nam-gi, the former president of Gwangju National University of Education. Hello, Dr. Park. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Yeah, it is my great pleasure to have a chance to talk with Gen Z about your intelligence level.
Right, so as a Gen Z, I felt pretty targeted as well by the discussion we had earlier. So would you say, are Gen Zs truly less intelligent than their parents? What are your thoughts on this?
I would be very careful with that claim. It is not strictly accurate to say like that. So while there are reports suggesting a decline in IQ, the primary evidence they used, such as PISA and team score measures, learned competencies that is strongly shaped by schooling and environment, rather than innate intellectual potentials, IQ. So it is a logical leap to conclude that intelligence itself has dropped. So historically, we saw the Flynn effect, where an average IQ score rose throughout the 20th century. We are now seeing a reverse Flynn effect in some countries, not every country, and where scores have stagnated or slightly dipped. However, this may reflect a shift in cognitive strengths rather than a loss of intelligence. So, for instance, recent declines might be temporary results of pandemic-related learning gaps and social isolation rather than a permanent generation decline. So my bottom line is this. There is no strong proof that Gen Z has lower innate intelligence, but there is credible evidence that some key skills are slipping, especially literacy and what I call cognitive endurance, meaning the ability to focus and think deeply for a sustained period. So that's a serious education issue, whatever label we put on it.
I see, Dr. Park, quite positive indeed. I like it. Then what factors are driving findings that GenZ shows a lower cognitive performance?
Yeah, the three mechanisms come up repeatedly. So first, digital distraction. So already you talk about that many digital platforms are engineered for rapid switching, constant engagement. Even learning device can train habits like frequent checking, scrolling, and multitasking. When attention is repeatedly interrupted, you lose time to task switching, make more errors, and form weaker long-term memories. Second, mode effects. You talk about this one also. The medium changes how we read and learn. So for longer or more complex text, paper often shows a small advantage in comprehension. So one explanation is that paper supports a stable mental map in our brain of the text, while scrolling can make location and structure feel less anchored. So it's hard to take it out because there is no anchor, especially for younger learners. And third, off-task behavior, the digital temptation problem. Unless classrooms and devices are tightly managed, students can easily drift into unrelated activities, which means more screen time does not equal more learning time. So importantly, the document also notes a key nuance. Much of the evidence is correlational and sometimes based on students' self-reports. So we couldn't claim that is a screen cause lower ability. So correlation and cause is different in a simplistic way. So the risk depends on how technology is used, the level of teacher control, and the quality of instructional design, I think.
Well, Professor, I feel much more reassured right now after your explanation. And what long-term impact could this shifts in education methods, such as technology-driven learning, have on cognitive development?
Yeah, long-term, the biggest task is not lower intelligence, I think, but a shift in cognitive habits, weaker sustained attention, reduced deep reading stamina, and the shallower processing, especially if learning becomes dominated by fast, fragmented notification, rich screen experience. Over years, that can mean students become less practiced at building complex mental models, following long arguments, and retaining knowledge. Another impact is on literacy and comprehension, particularly for longer explanatory text. If most reading happens in scrolling environment without strong supports such as page structure, annotation routine, deliberate reading, students may develop a scheme mindset that undermines understanding and memory. But the long-term picture is not automatically negative. The document emphasized that in limited, well-designed cases like tightly constrained adaptive practice or targeted remediation, technology can support basic skill building. The key is right tool, right test, right controls, rather than replacing the fundamentals of deep learning. So the strategic takeaway is keep tech purpose limited and well-governed, protect conditions for deep work, especially in earlier grades, and design learning so that attention, comprehension, and long-term memory are deliberately trained, not accidentally eroded. Thank you.
Right, so I guess the challenge will be figuring out how to use technology in the right way and in moderation. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we just spoken with an expert about whether Gen Z is truly less intelligent than their parents, what may be driving these cognitive patterns, and the potential long-term impact of changing education methods. But the conversation doesn't just stop in the classroom. Many researchers are now turning their attention to, of course, social media. So how does heavy social media use affect teen cognition?
Well, the thing is, a US research team tracked teenagers' social media usage patterns over a certain period of time, that is 3-year period, and they assessed language skills, memory, and processing speed. The group that used social media frequently over a long period of time scored the lowest in language and memory tests, while lighter users demonstrated stronger overall cognitive performance. Researchers also noticed that excessive social media use was linked to higher rates of depression, anxiety, and sleep problems. So these emotional difficulties may also make it harder to focus and think clearly over time. So in short, the more they have the screen time, their performances declined.
What's concerning also is that this experiment was done over a long period of time as well. And this growing evidence that this lowers cognitive performance shows that that's why it's influencing policy decisions. So how are countries now restricting social media use?
Well, countries like Australia already decided last year that they're going to have legislation that prevents minors under 16 to access these social media platforms, banning the use for many of these children and adolescents without that parental support. Same goes for Denmark and Spain, who are already looking forward to this new boundaries for people who are under 15 or 16 years of age. In terms of Denmark, it would be completely banning the use of these applications, and for Spain, it would be having a parental control type of contract.
So it's clear that countries are taking this on a national level. So this brings us to a bigger question of balance. What does a healthy learning environment look like to you?
Well, I think you read this article before. Since 2025, the government announced they will use an AI-based digital textbooks for students in primary, elementary schools in Korea. And there is no denying the advantages. We all know that the AI can analyze mistakes, personalize the next task they have to do, and track progress. Immediate feedback and high engagement make learning efficient, but is it really effective? Many parents, including myself, remain concerned. From a parent's perspective, convenience can easily blur the line between screen time and study time. So for growing children, too much screen time can make it harder for them to focus a lot and think as well. So one begins to wonder, is this learning or just having fun, just watching something on screen time? So that is why I still value paper-based learning. So as you mentioned earlier, the balance between technology and also thinking about this technology and deeper learning should be a thing that we have to talk about a lot.
Right. At the same time, people still say clear boundaries are really important, especially for young children. So Fabio, should young children rely on traditional learning?
I do feel that traditional learning has a lot of benefits. At the same time, there's this big dilemma because we cannot let go of this very important and powerful tools that we have right now. And so we need to go with the times, and because of that, we need to adapt our system so that it's a little bit more controlled. There's some guidance. I feel like the power of autonomy that a lot of students have right now with these technological tools ends up becoming, a very blurred line between screen time, and that can become a distraction, and learning time. And I feel that for myself too. Sometimes I would spend hours of my day just watching my screen, and then I would finish my day without remembering most of what I consumed. So I do think that the learning process that is involved with this technological tool should be controlled and supervised.
So as technology reshapes how the next generation learns, the question may not be whether Gen Z is less capable, but whether the environment around them is changing faster than their brains can adapt. And finding the right balance between innovation and healthy cognitive development is likely to be one of the most important challenges of our time. And Arirang TV is celebrating its 30th anniversary with a special global viewer event, My Arirang Story. So share your experience with Arirang TV and what it has meant to you through a photo or video. Submit your story by March 8th, 2026, and selected entries will receive BTS's 5th album, Arirang. So visit www.arirang.com for more details. We can't wait to hear from you. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. My News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Chun.
The pleasure is mine.
And also Fabio.
Thank you for having me.
And to your viewers, thank you so much for watching. And whether you're Gen Z or not, we hope that you keep your mind active and your screen time in check. We are
News Generation.